The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Councillor Jarek rose from his seat. His scaled skin reflected the blue light of the chamber as he stretched to his full height of nearly 9 feet. Representatives from the 12 most powerful species in the known universe watched with varied expressions as the Draconian Empire's delegate prepared to speak. "The evidence is clear," Jarek said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "The humans have expanded beyond reasonable limits. They have established mining operations on 17 worlds in just 20 solar cycles. Their military technology advances at an alarming rate. We cannot ignore this threat any longer." Outside the sealed chamber doors, Ambassador Frank Miller paced nervously. The human representative had been denied entry to the emergency session despite his diplomatic status. This was the 3rd time in a month that Council protocols had been bent to exclude Earth's voice. Inside, Councillor Mokhtar of the Tellurian hegemony nodded in agreement. "Their ships appear in systems unannounced. They make trade agreements with developing species before we can establish proper protectorates. They upset the balance we have maintained for millennia." Only Councillor Elavix of the Voleri seemed troubled by the direction of the discussion. Her luminescent skin pulsed with concerned patterns as she raised a slender hand. "Perhaps we mistake adaptability for aggression," she suggested. "Humans survived on a world with extreme climate variations and thousands of competing species. Their rapid innovation comes from necessity, not malice." Councillor Jarek flicked his tail dismissively. "Your species has always been overly fascinated with primitive cultures, Elavix. The Volari were similarly entranced by the Jaxians, who now serve as our maintenance workers." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the chamber. "The question before us is simple," announced Council Chair Drovak, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Do we act now to contain this species, or wait until their expansion threatens core worlds?" Councillor Nyxera of the Nexates, a species resembling large insectoids, clicked her mandibles in disagreement. "We should invite humans into our coalition properly. Their creativity cold." "Their creativity could upend the stability we have built across 20,000 systems," interrupted Jarek. "I call for the vote. I propose we classify humans as a destabilizing influence and implement the containment protocols immediately." Ambassador Miller pressed his ear against the chamber door, straining to hear. A sympathetic Volari aide stood nearby, her skin pulsing with worried colors. "They cannot do this," Miller whispered. "Earth has followed every regulation since we joined the interstellar community." Inside, the voting commenced. One by one, the councillors pressed their appendages against the glowing orbs before them. The chamber's central hologram displayed the results in real time. 10 in favor, announced Chair Drovak. 2 opposed. The motion carries. Elavix stood abruptly. "You condemn a species without representation. This violates our founding principles." "The principles serve the stability," replied Jarek smoothly. "Admiral Vexor, you may now present the subjugation strategy." A heavily decorated Kraxis military officer stepped forward. His chitinous armor clicked as he moved to the central platform. "We have assembled a fleet of 400 warships from contributing council species," Admiral Vexor announced. "We will enter Earth's solar system in formation, neutralize their orbital defenses, and establish planetary control nodes. Standard subjugation protocols will follow." Outside, the Volari aide grabbed Miller's arm. "Ambassador, you must warn your people. The vote has passed." Miller's face paled. "How long do we have?" "The fleet departs in 3 days. They will reach Earth in 1 standard galactic month." Miller nodded grimly and hurried toward the communication center. He needed to reach Admiral Susan Wright immediately. Earth's survival now depended on her response to this threat. Inside the chamber, Admiral Vexor was concluding his presentation. "We anticipate minimal casualties if humans surrender promptly. If they resist, we are prepared for full pacification measures." Councillor Elavix's skin had darkened to a deep blue of mourning. "You may find," she said quietly, "that humans are not like any species you have subjugated before. No one in the chamber paid her warning any attention. The decision was made. The mighty council had spoken. Ambassador Frank Miller's hands shook as he entered the secure communication room. The Volariade had given him access codes that bypassed the council's monitoring systems. He had 15 minutes at most before security protocols would detect the unauthorized transmission to Earth. "This is Ambassador Miller with Emergency Classification Omega," he said into the quantum transmitter. "I need to speak with Admiral Wright immediately." The transmission took nearly 3 minutes to reach Earth's United Space Command headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains. Frank paced nervously, knowing each second brought the Council's security teams closer. On Earth, Admiral Susan Wright was reviewing tactical simulations when her communication officer interrupted. "Ma'am, we have an emergency transmission from Ambassador Miller. Classification Omega." Wright's expression hardened. In 15 years of service, no one had ever used that classification. She nodded, and the officer transferred the call to her private terminal. "Ambassador, report." Miller's face appeared, lined with stress. "The Council voted 10-2 for our subjugation. They're sending 400 warships. We have 1 month before they reach Earth." Wright showed no panic, only a calculating intensity. "Understood. Did they reveal their approach vector?" Miller blinked in surprise at her calm response. "They'll enter through the Kuiper Belt." "Admiral, this isn't a diplomatic mission. They're bringing planet crackers and neural compliance fields. Get back to your quarters and maintain normal routine," Wright instructed. "Destroy any evidence of this transmission. We'll handle things from here." As the transmission ended, Miller noticed warning lights flashing on the console. Council security had detected the communication. He quickly erased the logs and slipped out, heart pounding against his ribs. On Earth, Admiral Wright immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. 6 military leaders and 3 civilian officials gathered in the command center's secure room. General Alan Powell arrived last, his uniform slightly rumpled from being woken at 3 a.m. "The Council has voted for subjugation," Wright announced without preamble. 400 ships, 1-month timeline. The room erupted in panic until Wright slammed her hand on the table. "We've prepared for this possibility since first contact. It's time to activate Protocol Omega." General Powell's face reddened. "That's insane. We should mobilize our fleet, call in our Mars and Europa forces." "To do what exactly, Alan?" Wright asked calmly. "Even with every ship we have, we'd be outgunned 20-1. Dr. Olivia Martinez, the head xenobiologist, spoke up. "Protocol Omega is our best chance. Conventional warfare plays to their strengths. We need to change the game." Wright nodded and entered her command codes into the room's central console. A holographic display illuminated, showing Earth and its colonies throughout the solar system. "Effective immediately, I'm activating Protocol Omega with full authority under the Existential Threat Act," Wright said. "All communication regarding our response becomes compartmentalized. Each of you will oversee one aspect only." She turned to Dr. Martinez. "Olivia, your team has 48 hours to complete your biological analysis of all Council species. I want vulnerabilities, not weapons." Martinez nodded and made notes on her tablet. "Jack Nelson," Wright continued, addressing the chief engineer, "begin hardening our communication network according to the Faraday protocols. Nothing gets in or out without our knowledge." The grizzled engineer simply nodded. "Lieutenant Commander Patricia Johnson," Wright said to the youngest officer present, "implement your scattered response strategy. I want 5,000 civilian vessels prepared within 2 weeks." Johnson straightened in her chair. "Yes, Admiral." The simulator results were promising. Director William Garcia raised his hand. "What about our off-world colonies? They'll be first in line when the Council arrives." "Already addressed," Wright replied. "Each colony receives deployment package Sierra 9. They know what to do." General Powell still looked unconvinced. "This is a massive gamble, Susan. If Protocol Omega fails, humanity is finished." Admiral Wright's eyes showed no doubt. This isn't a gamble, Alan. The Council expects us to either surrender or fight conventionally. They don't understand humans. We don't just adapt to the game. We change it entirely. As the meeting ended, Wright stayed behind, looking at the holographic display of their solar system. She zoomed in on the outer reaches where the Council fleet would soon appear. They think we're just another species to subjugate, she whispered to herself. They're about to learn a very difficult lesson. Dr. Olivia Martinez hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her lab beneath Denver buzzed with activity as her team analyzed the biological samples collected from the 12 Council species over years of seemingly friendly diplomatic exchanges. The Draconians have a sensitivity to nitrogen compounds, she said, pointing to data on her screen. And the Craxus nervous system can be disrupted by specific sound frequencies. Her assistant nodded and added the information to their growing database. What about the Tellurians? They're commanding most of the fleet. Martinez smiled slightly. They can't process certain wavelengths of light. It causes temporary disorientation. Not harmful, but effective. Across the complex, Jack Nelson led a team of engineers working on Earth's communication network. Unlike conventional military preparations, they weren't building defenses. They were creating an entirely new system. The normal channels stay active, Nelson explained to his team. We want them to think they're hearing everything. The real communications will run on the quantum network. A young engineer raised her hand. But won't they detect the quantum signals? Nelson shook his head. Not if we hide them in cosmic background radiation. To their sensors, it'll look like natural noise. He tapped his tablet. The beauty is simplicity. Sometimes the best technology isn't the most advanced. It's the most unexpected. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Patricia Johnson stood in a massive hangar in Arizona, surrounded by what appeared to be ordinary civilian vessels, passenger ships, mining craft, and cargo haulers. None had visible weapons or military markings. These ships look harmless, she told the gathered pilots. That's the point. The Council expects warships or surrender. They don't expect 5,000 civilian vessels moving in patterns that make no strategic sense to their military doctrine. She pointed to a cargo ship. This vessel has been modified to deploy nanite clouds when activated. The nanites aren't weapons. They simply disable electrical systems temporarily. She moved to a passenger liner. This one carries specialized communication equipment that can broadcast those disruptive frequencies Dr. Martinez identified. One pilot looked skeptical. We'll be sitting ducks out there. Johnson smiled. That's what they'll think too. Until it's too late. You'll receive your specific flight paths tomorrow. Memorize them. Once Protocol Omega activates, there can be no deviation. In orbit around Saturn, Captain Laura Bennett supervised the final preparations of stealth platforms hidden within the planet's rings. The ice particles provide perfect cover, she told her team via secure channel. When the Council fleet arrives, they'll scan for military installations and find nothing. Her second-in-command looked concerned. What if they detect us anyway? Then we activate early, Bennett replied. But Admiral Wright's plan depends on them splitting their forces. They need to think we're disorganized and panicking. Back on Earth, Admiral Wright met with Director William Garcia in a secure room deep underground. Our off-world colonies are implementing Sierra 9, Garcia reported. To any observer, it looks like they're preparing basic defenses while moving valuable resources to Earth. Wright nodded. And the actual preparations? Complete. Every colony has its hidden role in Protocol Omega. The asteroid mining stations have been especially creative. He handed her a tablet. They turned their extraction equipment into something the Council will never expect. Wright reviewed the information and allowed herself a small smile. Have we received any diplomatic communication from the Council yet? No, Garcia replied. They're maintaining communication silence until they reach our system. Classic intimidation tactic. Good, Wright said. The longer they think we're in the dark, the better. In her private quarters that night, Admiral Wright reviewed all aspects of Protocol Omega one final time. The plan violated every conventional military doctrine. It didn't focus on defense or offense, but on changing the nature of the conflict itself. She thought about the Council species, each thousands of years older than human civilization, each convinced of their superiority. They expected either surrender or a desperate last stand. They studied our weapons, she murmured to herself. They should have studied our history books instead. Across the solar system, humanity prepared not for war as the Council understood it, but for something entirely different. While the alien fleet approached with overwhelming force, humans worked silently, getting ready to change the rules of the game. The Council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 400 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. At the center of the formation, the massive command vessel of Admiral Vexor led the way. "Scan the system," Vexor ordered, his chitinous fingers tapping impatiently on his command chair. "I want full tactical assessment." His officers worked quickly, their many appendages moving across control surfaces with practiced efficiency. "Strange readings," Admiral reported his sensor officer. "We detect no military buildup. Their orbital defenses are minimal." Vexor's neck ridges flared with surprise. "They've had a full month to prepare. Are they surrendering without a fight?" The communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're detecting thousands of small ships launching from Earth and its colonies. They appear to be civilian vessels." On the main view screen, the sensor data showed a bewildering sight. Countless small ships were moving away from Earth in all directions. Some headed toward the outer planets, others toward the asteroid belt. A few hundred were even moving directly toward the Council fleet. "What is this strategy?" Vexor wondered aloud. "Sensor analysis. The vessels show no weapon signatures," his tactical officer replied. "Many contain life signs consistent with human civilians. They appear to be evacuating." Vexor had studied human history in preparation for this mission. Humans typically stood and fought when cornered. This behavior made no sense according to their psychological profiles. "Admiral, the lead group of human ships is broadcasting on open channels," the communications officer said. "They're requesting cultural exchange and diplomatic talks." In his command ship near Jupiter, Commander Ryan Foster kept his expression neutral as he opened communications with the alien fleet. "This is Commander Foster of the Earth Cultural Exchange Initiative," he said calmly. "We come unarmed to discuss peaceful alternatives to conflict." His crew maintained their composure despite the tension. Their ships carried no conventional weapons. That was true. What they did carry was far more subtle. On the Council command ship, Admiral Vexor was growing frustrated. "This is some kind of trick. Divide the fleet. Send 200 ships to Earth directly. The rest will intercept these scattered vessels. If they're evacuating resources, we'll capture them." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, dividing our forces contradicts standard subjugation protocol." Vexor's voice hardened. "These humans aren't behaving according to any known defensive doctrine. Adapt to the situation." The massive Council fleet began to split apart, ships heading in different directions to chase down the scattered human vessels. Hidden in Saturn's rings, Captain Laura Bennett watched through specialized sensors as 30 alien warships approached her position. "They took the bait," she whispered. "Prepare for Phase 2, but hold until Admiral Wright gives the signal." Her crew quietly acknowledged the order, readying systems that had never been tested against alien technology. In the asteroid belt, Commander Gregory Wallace observed Council ships pursuing mining vessels through the debris field. The aliens were having trouble navigating the dense field while the smaller human ships zipped through familiar pathways. "They're burning excess fuel trying to follow our patterns," Wallace noted with satisfaction. Just as Lieutenant Commander Johnson predicted. Back on Earth, Admiral Wright stood in the Central Command Center, watching the tactical display as the Council fleet dispersed throughout the solar system. "They've divided their forces," Director Garcia observed. Exactly as you predicted. Wright nodded. The Council has conquered dozens of species, but always using the same playbook. They expect us to either fight conventionally or surrender. She watched as the largest section of the alien fleet approached Earth, their weapons systems powering up for the expected resistance. Admiral, her communications officer called out, Council flagship is broadcasting their demands system-wide. Admiral Vexor's face appeared on the main screen, his alien features set in what passed for confidence in his species. People of Earth, the alien commander announced, your solar system is now under Council control. Surrender your military assets and prepare for integration into the galactic community under protected status. Resistance will result in planetary bombardment. Admiral Wright allowed herself a small smile as she turned to her staff. They've completely divided their forces and committed to their approach. Send the signal to all commands. She pressed her hand against the activation panel, authorizing the next phase of Protocol Omega. Now, she said quietly, we show them how humans really fight. Throughout the solar system, human ships received the signal. The trap was ready to be sprung. Commander Ryan Foster's small fleet of diplomatic vessels moved closer to the largest section of the Council Armada. On his signal, hidden compartments on the hulls of his ships slid open. Deploy nanite clouds, he ordered calmly. Pattern Alpha. Clouds of microscopic machines billowed out, invisible to the naked eye, but spreading rapidly toward the alien vessels. Designed by Dr. Nathan Harris, these weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were simply drawn to specific energy signatures used by Council weapon systems. On the Council flagship, alarms began to sound. Admiral, shouted the weapons officer, our primary weapons are going offline. Admiral Vexor rose from his command chair. Impossible. Run diagnostics. Systems show no damage, but weapons aren't responding. The officer replied, confusion evident in his voice. It's as if the control pathways are being redirected. Near Jupiter, another group of human ships activated their specialized equipment. These vessels, under Lieutenant Samantha Cole's command, began broadcasting the precise frequencies Dr. Martinez had identified, each carefully tuned to affect different Council species' neurological systems. Inside a Craxus cruiser, the crew suddenly found it difficult to concentrate. The Tellurian ships reported visual distortions. Draconian officers experienced mild disorientation. None of the effects were harmful or permanent, but they created confusion and disrupted command chains. From her hidden position in Saturn's rings, Captain Laura Bennett gave the order her team had been waiting for. Activate electromagnetic pulse arrays, she commanded. Dozens of platforms concealed within the icy rings powered up simultaneously. They had been designed to target the specific communication frequencies used by the Council fleet. Across the solar system, alien ships suddenly lost contact with each other and their command vessel. Their advanced communication network, which relied on quantum entanglement technology, had been calculated to be immune to interference. The human engineers had simply created pulses that didn't jam the communications. They overwhelmed the receivers with noise. In the asteroid belt, Commander Gregory Wallace activated the modified mining equipment. What had once been used to break down asteroids now projected focused gravitational fields, not powerful enough to damage the alien ships, but sufficient to disrupt their precision formation flying. Council ships that had pursued human vessels into the belt now found themselves being gently but persistently pushed into incorrect trajectories, burning excessive fuel to maintain position. On Earth, Admiral Wright watched as the coordinated human response unfolded across the solar system. Status report, she requested. Project Trojan is at 97% deployment, reported her tactical officer. Council weapons systems are being neutralized ship by ship. Director Garcia added, neurological disruption frequencies are operating at full effectiveness. We're receiving reports of confusion and disorientation throughout their fleet. Communication blackout is complete. Another officer confirmed. Their quantum network has been effectively neutralized. They've reverted to basic light-speed communications, which means significant delays between their scattered forces. Admiral Vexor stared at his ship's status displays in disbelief. In just 12 minutes, his impressive subjugation fleet had been rendered largely ineffective without a single destructive shot fired. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Their technology is inferior to ours. We studied all their weapons capabilities." His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's breaking through despite our communication problems." Admiral Wright's face appeared on the Council flagship's main screen. Her expression was not one of fear or desperation, but calm confidence. "Admiral Vexor," she said, "your fleet has been neutralized. We could have destroyed your ships, but that is not our way. Your weapons are temporarily disabled. Your communications are disrupted. Your formations are scattered." Vexor's neck ridges flattened against his head, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "This is not possible," he responded. "No species has ever." "That's the point, Admiral," Wright interrupted. "No species has ever faced humanity before. We don't fight the way you expect. We don't use the weapons you anticipate. We change the nature of the conflict itself." She leaned forward slightly. "Now, we would like to discuss the Council's decision to subjugate our people. We have a counter-proposal we think you'll find interesting." Throughout the solar system, Council ships drifted in confusion, their carefully planned subjugation turning into something unprecedented in their long history of conquest, a complete reversal of power without destruction. In the asteroid belt, on the moons of gas giants, in Earth orbit, and on the planet itself, humans waited for the next phase of Admiral Wright's plan, the diplomatic offensive that would change galactic politics forever. Admiral Wright stood in Earth's orbital diplomatic station as the small shuttle carrying Admiral Vexor docked. After 3 days of careful negotiations, the Council commander had agreed to meet in person. It was unprecedented for a subjugation fleet leader to enter talks with a target species. Vice Admiral Steve Paddle stood beside Wright, his expression tight with concern. "This could still be a trick," he whispered. "They might have hidden capabilities we haven't detected." Wright shook her head slightly. "Our scans are thorough. His shuttle is clean. Besides, he has more to lose than we do right now." The airlock cycled open, and Admiral Vexor stepped through, flanked by 2 aides. The Kraxus commander was impressive in person, nearly 7 feet tall with gleaming chitinous armor that was part of his natural exoskeleton. His 4 eyes scanned the room carefully. "Admiral Wright," he said, his translator converting his clicking speech into English, "this meeting violates all Council protocols for species subjugation." Wright smiled slightly. "I believe we've moved beyond protocols. Admiral, please join us in the conference room." The human and alien delegations moved to a large circular table. Ambassador Elizabeth Watson, Earth's chief diplomatic specialist, had prepared extensively for this moment. "Admiral Vexor," Watson began, "we appreciate your willingness to engage in dialogue. Before we present our proposal, we'd like to share something with you." She nodded to Director Garcia, who activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed private communications between Council members, recorded before the subjugation vote. Vexor watched as Councillor Jarek spoke with 3 other Council members about dividing Earth's resources among their species after subjugation. "This meeting never happened," Jarek said in the recording. "The resource allocation must appear to follow standard protocols, but our 4 species will receive 90% of Earth's mineral wealth." Vexor's neck ridges flattened against his head. "Where did you get this?" "We have friends among Council species," Watson replied simply. Not everyone agreed with the vote. "This evidence shows the subjugation order violated the Council's own founding principles." Admiral Wright leaned forward. "We could distribute this evidence throughout the galaxy. How many other species would question their own subjugation when they learn the truth?" Vexor's aides shifted uncomfortably, but the Admiral remained composed. "What is your proposal?" he asked after a moment of silence. Ambassador Watson activated another display showing a new organizational structure. We call it the Galactic Concordat, a new framework for interstellar relations based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. She explained the concept while Vexor listened with increasing interest. The Concordat would preserve autonomy for member species while creating mutual defense agreements and technology-sharing protocols. This benefits everyone, Watson continued. Even the major council species would gain access to human innovation while maintaining their status. Vice Admiral Patel, still skeptical, spoke up. Of course, should these talks fail, we've prepared a second phase of our response. His tone made it clear this would be less pleasant for the council forces. At that moment, a Craxus officer burst into the room. Admiral Vexor, we have a situation. One of our ships detected unusual activity and attempted to fire on a human vessel. The weapons wouldn't respond, but then one of our crew, Zixera, interfered. Vexor's eyes narrowed. Explain. She disabled the manual override. She says she's been working with humans for months. There are others like her throughout our fleet. Admiral Wright nodded. We mentioned having friends among council species. Zixera is one of many who believe the council has strayed from its original purpose. Vexor was silent for a long moment. As a military leader, he recognized when a position was untenable. The humans had outmaneuvered the council at every turn, technologically, strategically, and now diplomatically. I cannot agree to this Concordat without council approval, he finally said. But I can agree to a ceasefire and preliminary negotiations. Ambassador Watson smiled. That's all we ask for now, Admiral. A chance to present our case to the full council. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Vexor paused before leaving. In 10,000 years of council history, no species has ever done what yours has accomplished today. You could have destroyed our fleet when we were vulnerable, but you chose another path. Admiral Wright met his alien gaze steadily. Destruction is easy, Admiral. Building something new, that's the true test of an advanced civilization. The message to the council was sent that day, requesting an emergency session with human representatives present. The game had indeed changed. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with unusual energy. For the first time in its 5,000-year history, representatives from a species targeted for subjugation stood before the ruling body as equals. Ambassador Kelly Robinson led the human delegation, her calm demeanor hiding the weight of responsibility she carried. Council Chair Drovak struggled to maintain order as voices rose in argument. This is outrageous, Councillor Jurek shouted. They disabled an entire military fleet. They should be facing punishment, not standing in our sacred chamber. Ambassador Robinson waited patiently for the noise to settle. When she finally spoke, her voice carried throughout the vast room without needing amplification. Counselors of the galaxy, we come before you not as enemies, but as potential allies. The recent events in our solar system have demonstrated that the old ways of conquest and subjugation belong to the past. She activated a holographic display showing the evidence of corruption that Admiral Wright had shared with Vexor. These private communications reveal that the vote to subjugate Earth was influenced by desires for our resources, not by legitimate security concerns. The chamber erupted again as counselors saw their private deals exposed. Some denied the evidence, while others fell silent, their guilt evident. Counselor Elavix of the Volari stood. I warned this council that humans were different. Now we see the truth. They could have destroyed our fleet, but chose restraint. They seek cooperation instead of revenge. We should listen. From his seat, Admiral Vexor nodded. His report on the incident had already circulated among military leaders of all council species. The fact that humans had neutralized the fleet without bloodshed had earned their respect. Councillor Narration of the Eltaran Collective, who had originally voted for subjugation, seemed troubled. If what you show us is true, then principles that guided the council for millennia have been corrupted. Perhaps it is time for change. Not everyone was convinced. A block of 5 counselors, led by Jurek, demanded immediate military action against Earth. A second, larger fleet to correct the failure of the first. The humans cannot be trusted, Jarek insisted. This talk of cooperation is merely a delay tactic while they build more defenses. Ambassador Robinson remained unruffled. If the Council votes for war again, we will defend ourselves. But consider this. News of what happened in our system has already spread. How many other subjugated species are watching right now, wondering if they too could stand where I stand? Her words hit their mark. Throughout Council space, dozens of species that had been conquered or protected over the centuries were indeed paying close attention. Reports of humanity's successful resistance had traveled faster than the Council could contain them. On a dozen worlds, populations that had accepted their place in the galactic hierarchy began questioning their status. Small resistance movements that had existed for generations suddenly found new members and new hope. Council Chair Drovak recognized the danger. The entire system of governance that had maintained stability for thousands of years was at risk. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should consider the humans' proposal. Ambassador Robinson, please explain this Galactic Concordat in detail. As Robinson outlined the new framework, the council chamber divided into clear factions. Some councilors saw opportunity in change. Others feared losing their privileged positions. A few recognized that adaptation was necessary for survival. From the gallery, representatives from younger species watched with fascination. Many had joined the council structure out of fear, accepting subjugation as the only alternative to destruction. Now they glimpsed another possibility. Councillor Nix Era of the Nexites spoke after Robinson finished. For 10 centuries, my people have served on this council. In all that time, we never questioned the methods by which we maintained order. Perhaps that was our greatest failure. By the session's end, no vote had been taken, but the council had undeniably changed. The unity that had allowed them to control thousands of worlds was fracturing. Some species pledged to consider the Concordat. Others renewed their threats against Earth. As Ambassador Robinson returned to her temporary quarters, she received a message from Admiral Wright. Phase 1 complete. The Council is divided. Prepare for Phase 2. The game continued to change, and humanity was writing the new rules. 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, Admiral Susan Wright stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Unity Station. The massive structure orbited in neutral space between Earth's solar system and the nearest Council world. Through the viewport, she watched as ships from 50 different species arrived for the historic signing ceremony. "Quite a view," said a familiar voice behind her. Wright turned to see former Councillor Elavix, her luminescent skin pulsing with patterns of satisfaction. "I never imagined we'd be here 6 months ago," Wright admitted. "When we activated Protocol Omega, we hoped for survival. This is something much more." Elavix moved beside her to watch the arriving delegations. The old council is finished. 10,000 years of tradition ended because they couldn't understand one simple truth. "What's that?" Wright asked. "That subjugation creates enemies, not allies," Elavix replied. "Your people showed there was another way." In the main assembly hall, Daniel Rodriguez, the human legal expert who had drafted the Galactic Concordat, made final adjustments to the document. Unlike the Council's rules, which filled thousands of pages, the Concordat was remarkably simple. Each species would retain complete autonomy over their home systems. Mutual defense pacts would protect all members. Technology and resources would be shared according to fair trade principles. Most importantly, no species could force its will upon another. "Will it actually work?" asked Lisa Chen, Earth's cultural ambassador. She had spent months helping various species understand each other, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable. Rodriguez nodded confidently. "It's already working. 20 former Council species have signed, and 30 previously subjugated worlds. The balance of power has shifted permanently. Not everyone had embraced the new galactic order. Councillor Jarek and his allies had withdrawn to their core systems, creating a smaller alliance based on the old principles of dominance. They had threatened retaliation, but found themselves increasingly isolated as more species joined the Concordat. Ambassador Kelly Robinson entered the assembly hall, looking tired but satisfied. The Tellurians have just announced their joining. That's a major victory. They were one of the founding council species. Why the change of heart? Rodriguez asked. They're practical, Robinson explained. In just 6 months, Concordat worlds have developed more new technologies through cooperation than the Council did in the last century. They don't want to be left behind.